and welcome everybody to the channel where we help property investors just like you go further, faster on your property investment journey. And today we have a very special guest who has personally been investing himself in property since the 90s. He's seen at least 3 recessions to my knowledge and has gone on to not only survive but also thrive where other investors have turned around and shut up shop. Now, he's had a career in the armed forces. Before he decided jumping out of planes was probably a little bit too much for him, and he wound up doing regional as a regional sales director. And eventually, he today's guest became a trainer for Progressive Properties, who are one of the largest property training companies in the UK at the moment. And he's also the author of the book Dominate Your Ground. And he's also a Land Rover restoration enthusiast. So today's guest tends to focus much more on helping his one-to-one clients put together deals in their local area and become professional property traders so that they can basically start living a life on their own terms. So without further ado, I would like to welcome today's special guest, Mr. Mark Ianson.
Very good.
Okay, you like that?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Azu.
You're very, very welcome. So, right, my first real question for you, to be honest, is can you briefly share your journey with regards to becoming a property investing coach and what motivated you to specialize in helping other traders, property traders, dominate their ground?
Well, it's a weird thing. I think like anyone back in the 90s, we concentrated on flips. And that's because there wasn't really an investor. There wasn't any coaches, any training or books on property investing, really. And there wasn't even a buy-to-let product around. It was all commercial finance. And so we started with flips. And like everyone, I started with a flip. And the first one, I bought it for 64. It was a 4-bed detached house. Couldn't afford to keep it, so I had to sell it, or, I had to flip it. I did the work myself. And this is a weird thing. I mean, I was 28 years old, so I bought it at 64, did all the work myself, took me 3 months, and then it was still worth 64 when I'd finished it. So, one of them things, I guess. And I thought I was stuck there because I thought property developers and refurbs and stuff, I thought they were all rich, right? So, this was luck, not skill. I managed to swap it for 2 properties from a developer, which is the other golden no-no is don't go new build. And I went new build. So I now had 2 houses, which one I lived in and one I rented out. But that was kind of a light bulb moment. It was, right, hang on, this cash flows, this actually brings me in profit. And I didn't know anything about negotiating or BMV or anything like that at the time. But I thought this one actually pays some bills and it pays for itself. And so that becomes a light bulb moment. So I bought another one off a friend of mine. And he was in financial trouble. We had the tearful chat on the kitchen table and stuff, and I ended up buying his house for 45, and he stayed with me as a tenant for at least 6 years. He was a tenant. He's still a friend today. And then I bought my first HMO in 96, and I moved into it. I lived in the rooms. I moved into a room and I lost a tenant because they're quite transient HMO tenants. And I got round the house in about 18 months. That one I was more successful with because it not only paid for the bills, but it paid for the mortgage on the house and it paid for my car payments as well. And I was still working full time. So I thought, hang on, I actually know what I'm doing here. I bought that at 67 and sold it 18 months later for 137. And that gave me my chunk. And I've now got a chunk to play with. And I haven't stopped since. I've just carried on doing it now. And then about 15 years ago, I decided that I could share with others how to do it, how to produce a model that kind of works, not just, I mean, anyone can do up a house, right? Or anyone can buy it. You don't need a training course to buy a house. But forming a business model that works, repeatable business model and scalable business model is slightly more difficult. And I mean, I talk to people all the time, virtually every week, that are going to buy this great big house and then turn it into some other great big thing. Spend a fortune on it, and I see them on Facebook, and they've done a back to brick refurb, and they do look good. Let's face it, they do look good, but they've spent too much money on it by far. And if you're keeping a property, then it's your money, it's your time. Spend what you like. But if you're doing it for investment, the golden rule is don't make a loss, make a profit straight away, get in and out as quick as you can, keep your refurb fees or cost tight, and create a model that you can do again and again and again, you know.
I've actually, it's funny that you say that because it was only, I think last week I had someone reaching out to me, and we're talking about they were at the beginning part of their property investment journey. I said, okay, so what strategy are you going to be going with? Turned around and told me, oh, I'm going to do commercial to resi. I said, oh, have you got investment property already? No. I said, so why are you doing that now? And they said, oh, because in this economic climate, residential's not great. Actually, commercial's where the money's at. So I'm going to get into that. So I said, oh, have you got tons of money then and tons of funds to be able to do that? I said, oh, not really, but you don't need it and blah, blah, blah. I thought, wow, you don't know what's ahead of you. So I said, listen, this is my opinion. Do what you want. But I think maybe you start with something small. So if you get it wrong, it's not the biggest, it's not going to cost you loads to kind of fix and get it right. But if you do commercial, it's very long, it's very fund intensive and things like that. And that tends to be a much more higher level strategy for people that have been in it a while, or at least had a background in like building or something in property industry. But if you come in, you know, from the office or whatever, straight into property and you're going to do commercial to resi, I just thought, oh, well, you know, best of luck to you. And that's not where I would start if I was starting again. So
definitely not.
You're not wrong. So look, my next question then is kind of around that touching on that type of thing, which would be, what are the top challenges that you see property traders face when they start looking for deals, and how would you advise they overcome them? So.
Good question. So if you're going for a deal, and let's say it's your first one, because a lot of people that come to me are their first one, is don't take on too much. And I did. I mean, I've been there. I can't criticize anyone that does, because they take on too much, and then they can't manage the builders or the contractors. And it's weird because contractors and builders, they're odd people to deal with if you don't know what you're doing or you haven't dealt with them before. And the thing is, ask yourself a few questions. Have you run a crew before? Have you run a crew of people? Do you expect just to take on a builder and let them do the work and give them the responsibility to get what's called this passive kind of thing? It's not passive. It's never passive. And in a refurb, there's lots of decisions to make along the way, because the trades guys, quite often in the early 20s, brain's not that mature. They don't make decisions for themselves. They always go back to the customer to ask for the route or the way forward or the direction. And so you've got loads of decisions to make. Where do you put plug sockets? Where do you want the boiler mounted now? Because it used to be in a bedroom and you don't want it in a bedroom. How long's the flue? How long's the exit from the boiler to the outside wall? And there's all these little things that you don't think about when you're looking at a project. So if it's your first one, take on something manageable, that's small and easy to do, quick in and out, and cut your teeth on something that you're not going to spend 40 grand on. The builder walks off site because you fall out with them, and then you can't get anyone else to do the work, because no trades guys like finishing other people's work, because they know they walked off site. And if they walk off site, you're kind of stuck, and it produces this enormous amount of stress to get a job finished. Whereas if you're taking on something small and cut your teeth in something small and relatively easy, and I was on the phone to someone this morning, and they said, I used the word house doctoring, because there used to be an old TV show called The House Doctor. And doing a bit of house doctoring first as a stepping stone to doing a refurb is preferable than taking on something that's far too big. And another chap who was on the phone this morning, funnily enough, he told me about a Victorian house he wants to split into 4 flats. Hang on. I mean, I don't mean to. I mean, it's their money, it's their life, and it's their desire, I suppose. But please think about it first. Because the planning permission, which you'll need, of course, might turn you down at the amount of cars, because you're turning a family house, or what was a family house, into 4 separate families with 4 separate cars on that street. And if it's a terrace street, is there enough space on the street just to accommodate the parking? No, Mark, I think it's got, I think we can get parking down the side of the house. Okay, well, that's not the reason they turned down planning. It's because there's 4 extra families in the street and there's 4 more cars coming in and out every day. And that's why Article 4 was introduced, because people just used to go in and put 5, 6, 7 families in a single building. That's why Article 4 was kind of made a law, or made a thing. So think about your first job when you take on something, or gold advice I think is take on something nice and simple that you think's too simple for you, and cut your teeth in it. Learn how to manage a crew, learn how to take on a crew, manage the crew yourself. Separate jobs, not a builder, separate jobs. Because if you learn how to manage a crew using separate jobs, i.e. separate trades, and you'll need 6 or 7 trades, then you'll learn an awful lot on your first one, even if it's an easy one, than you will messing up a big one.
So when you say something small, as an example, would it be a simple mid-terrace, 2 or 3 bedroom property, whereby the plumbing is the boiler's okay, but you might need to do some work in the bathroom to modernize it, because it's got like the avocado bath suite, corner bath suite in there still, and perhaps do the carpets, a bit of painting, decorating, things like that, but maybe not necessarily a full rewire or full plumbing, central heating system, nothing to do with structure or the roof or anything like that, just generally paint, fix, clean, that type of thing?
Yeah, paint, fix, clean is a good one, because the thing is, I'm trying to think of a job that's too big. So every electrician will come out to a house, an old house that's empty and a bit battered, and say you need a full rewire, right? So, and that's because they want the work, and it's a good job for them. It's a good chunky job for them to get into, and that might cost $5,000. But in reality, rewiring is an incredibly intrusive thing to do to a house, because you've got to channel out all the cables and then replaster them back in again, and that's a big job to do. Now, I'm not saying don't rewire if you have to, but then you've got a choice whether you take on the job if it needs a rewire. So if it does genuinely need a rewire, just do another deal. Do another deal somewhere else where one doesn't need a rewire. I mean, yes, replace consumer units if they're broken or outdated, of course, because that's a safety thing, and they should be done. But you can choose jobs to take on that suit your level for the time being. So a lot of my property family know that I don't do roofs, and the reason I don't do roofs is because there's 2 trades involved. There's a roofer and a scaffolder, and they're 2 trades that are quite difficult to work together because they don't appear on site at the same time, because the scaffolding goes up first and then the roofer comes in and then the scaffolding comes back to take the scaffolding away. It's better stored on your land than it is on their land if they don't need it. So they'll leave it there for longer than you want, and they're quite difficult to negotiate with, the 2 trades. So if you take on a job that doesn't need a roof, i.e. the ridge line's straight, all the tiles are there, inside there's the sheet, I can't remember what it's called, the felting, it's all there and it looks good, then that's one less job that you have to worry about. And if you go around the house and it's got a bathroom, try and save as much of the bathroom as possible, as in like the tiling, or keep the suite if there's nothing wrong with it. The golden rule is on your first one, don't fix things that aren't broke. It's a lovely little rule, because if you try and save as much of the house as possible, and I make my money sometimes just from people's mistakes, where they've redesigned the bathroom and it's actually a bit of a higgledy-piggledy mess, or they've put things in that shouldn't have been there. Or, I mean, I went to see one just the other day. In fact, it was a terrace house, 2-bed terrace, which is my kind of normal stock. And they must have spent about £8,000 to £10,000 on the bathroom, which was downstairs. And it's a glorious bathroom. It's a lovely looking bathroom, but it's downstairs and there's a ceiling price on the street. And the ceiling price is about £110, maybe £115 if you're lucky. Now, they've just spent nearly £10,000 just on the bathroom. Now, that's never going to increase the value by that £10,000 because of the ceiling price on the street. So effectively, it's a homeowner, this is actually, that I've seen, and they've wasted their money, absolutely wasted their money. A bathroom suite costs between £300 and £400. It's perfectly acceptable to put a contract suite in a bathroom with a pedestal sink, a single tap, a low flush toilet, and not a 6mm bath, not the cheapy, nasty ones, but a 7mm bath in there, a contract suite in there. That's what the developers do when they build new houses. They don't put roll top baths with claws on them and gargoyles looking over them and stuff. They don't do that at all. So let's learn from the bigger companies that are doing this, professionally for decades and decades, rather than and this roll top path. I mean, it's a glorious path. Don't get me wrong, but completely wasted expense. Wasted expense.
So you mean, you said a few terms there. So contract suite is going down to somewhere like B&Q Wix's and just buying their bog standard 3-piece suite that they've got, bathroom suite, right?
Well, that's a good point. That's the one to avoid, because that's got the 6 mil bath, and the 6 mil bath is the bendy one that it needs extra support when you put them in, because they're quite. You can tell this for any bathroom suite. If you're doing a viewing, and just put your hand on the very centre of the bath, whatever bath's in there, and just let your weight go onto your hand. If it moves, that's probably a 6 mil, and they're the ones that kind of the grout splits all the time. That you get leaks on them because they bend a little bit. But if you go to a 7 mil, which is a contract suite from a trade yard, they won't sell 6 mils, because the 6 mil ones are about £300 or £250. Sometimes you see a deal on them. But if you go to a 7 mil, that's got a more solid base. It won't bend and twist. The grout won't split. And sometimes when the grout splits, it comes away from the shower cubicle, and that's when you get leaks downstairs. So about 350, 400, you get a decent suite, a contract suite, which all the developers are using, and they last for 20 years. Perfect types, and they look modern. Single pedestal sink tap and single tap pedestal sink. Sorry, they last for 20 years and they're fine, absolutely fine. Okay. Nothing wrong with them.
All right, and the other thing that you said was Article 4. So could you just briefly tell us what is Article 4?
Yeah. So Article 4 came in and it was mainly because of traffic, really. So in lots of areas, when people try to put more families in houses, they increase the traffic and the parking on the street. So these terrace streets that, generally speaking, are turned into HMO. So we take there's a kind of teaching out there, I suppose, to take a 3-bed with a corridor, so a large 3-bed, into a 5-bed and then turn it into a HMO. So if you imagine we've got a 3-bed terrace house, Victorian, with the stairs opposite the front door and then a corridor to the kitchen. So therefore we've got 2 downstairs reception rooms with separate doors. There's a kind of model out there that turns that into a 5-bed HMO. Nothing wrong with the model at all. It works. But if you have a family house, this was once a family house, and then turn it into a HMO, we've now taken a one family house or building, one family building, and put 5 separate families in there. And of course, they have 5 cars, or the tendency to have 5 cars. So we've gone from 1 car outside a terrace, parked on the street, to having 5 cars on the street, on the same terrace street. And so Article 4 came out really because of the increase in traffic, the increase in parking, the need for parking, and there's not enough on these terrace streets to get them all. And I'm sure that all of the audience have driven down a terrace street and thought, there's parking on either side, there's nowhere to get the car, and they end up driving around the block trying to find a space, and they can't park near their house and stuff. And that's the reason one of the reasons for Article 4 coming out, is that the increase in families in a single building and the increase in vehicles,
So it wasn't just a money grab to get an HMO license for property. There was actually some method to their madness. Okay.
Yeah, the cynical would say that, but yeah.
Right. So you mentioned that, one of the mistakes that people make is they go after properties that are maybe a bit too ambitious, right? So I was wondering, and you also talked about how you have had discussions with a few one-to-one clients. So I wondered, could you share with the listeners a story of how you've helped one of your clients, one of your one-to-ones, secure a great deal?
Oh yeah, we did a cracking deal for someone where we had to negotiate with the bank, because this was a new client, and they haven't really dealt with property before. So they went to see the vendor. They saw the lead. We kind of examined the patch together and decided what type of house to do in that area. And this particular area is part of Birmingham, and there's loads and loads in Birmingham. There's tons and tons of 3-bed semis, 1930s 3-bed semis. There's loads of them. And if you don't know what they look like, they've got the round bay windows. They've sometimes got the inset front door, or the small porch on the front. Perfect family houses. People live in them for decades and decades. and this one was battered. It really was battered. It was old. All the wood was dropping to bits on the front and stuff, and the kind of bay window was coming away from the house and all. So there was loads of gaps in it, and it just looked a bit of a mess. The seller was motivated because they were facing a repossession, and it was an older couple. And the chap that went out to see them, he had a chat with him, and they said, "Look, we need to do something with this property." And the client wasn't really, not wise enough, that's the wrong word, but experienced enough to do the deal. Didn't know what he was doing. So I chatted to the bank, and it was a really weird call with the bank. It was Barclays Bank, and they were facing repossession the following Wednesday. And so I was talking to a chap called Hussein, and he was a lovely guy, and he was telling us how to negotiate with him to get the deal. It was really quite a sweet phone call. And so we finally agreed that the bank wanted 132,000 as a settlement figure for settling the mortgage, and they would put off the repossession as long as we could promise to get it on the market within 3 months. Wow. So I thought, yeah, we could probably do that. I think we could do that. So we agreed with Hussein. This took 2 phone calls, but we did it. We agreed 132 with Barclays. We paid $5,000 to the couple because they wanted a new car, and they were driving around this battered old thing. So we were paying $5,000 for the car. So the property stood us at 130. Oh, well, stood the client anyway at 137, and the deal's done. It's an assisted sale. Which means he does the work on the property, the added value, and then sells it on the retail market on behalf of the owners or the vendors. And so he set to work, did all the work himself. He's actually he's in the trades himself, so he did all the work. It took a little bit longer because it was his first one. So I went up to site, I think 3 full days I spent, it was on a Wednesday's my kind of trade day. So Wednesday, I went up and we give him a day's work. I was rebuilding windowsills, and I'm quite handy on the tools, so we can help out clients like that. Right. Anyway, got it finished. And he had a couple of lovely trades guys there that were working away, and we had a bit of banter with them as well. And we got it on the market, and he eventually sold out for 204,000. Now, 204,000. Wow. It's a decent deal, right? But £204,000. And a young family moved into it. They wanted to live in the area, and they wanted that type of house. And so it sold for 204. He put 55 grand in the bank. Now, he started with nothing. He was starting from the kitchen table, no money of his own at all. And he was a bit worried about the refurb money. So I did his cost of works for him, and we came to 7.5 grand on the cost of works. And that's what I mean by keeping it tight. So this is a full refurb, bathroom, kitchen, decor, carpets, outside areas for 7.5. And most people think, hang on, you can't do it for that. Well, you can. So, and I'm from Yorkshire. I have a bit of Yorkshire in you. We're tight as you like. So I went to another one-to-one client and said, look, I've got this guy who is not done one before, but it's a simple refurb. It's just a normal refurb of property. I call them a remedial work sometimes because we're kind of making good. And she decided to lend him the money. So he borrowed the money. So he did it all for absolutely nothing, none of his own money whatsoever. Now, of course, he's got to pay her back at the end, which he did, and put 55 in the bank, which is not bad.
Wow, that's phenomenal, amazing. Because people often say, paying for trainers or paying for coaches or whatever, it's a rip-off, it's a scam. You can learn it all online. And now that we're in the digital age, we've got all these YouTube and Spotify and all these kind of things where you can go and watch and listen to information. Information is free. I think, why am I going to pay? I can just learn on the job. But for the first deal, no credit check, no huge deposit needed, none of that kind of stuff. It didn't need to be compliant sourcer or any of these kind of things. Just a buyer who was like, actually, I don't want to keep this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to work with you, and I'll do you get X amount of money. I'm going to do the work myself, and then I'll find a buyer, and then when the sale goes through, the first 40 grand or whatever of the sale goes through goes to you, and everything above that comes back to me, so I can pay my investor back who lent me the funds to do the refurb in the first place. So, wow. And how long did it take him to carry out the refurb?
It took 3 months, and now he knows to do them quicker because it was his first one. And people do take longer on their first one, because they don't realize the amount of decisions they've got to make along the way. There's quite a few. There's at least 100 decisions to make in a normal refurb. And he decided to change the bathroom. This was against advice, really, but because I said it's got a grey suite in the bathroom. Yeah. It's not new. It doesn't look modern, but there's nothing wrong with the grey suite, and it wasn't broke. And the golden rule is don't fix things that aren't broke. But he went ahead and changed it. And to be fair, it did look good. He did a cracking job. It was a white suite, and it was kind of coloured with orange as a secondary colour. So kind of grey and orange. He recoloured it grey, even though it was grey to start with. The suite would have been grey. It could have had the same effect, but it did look good though. It did look good in the photographs. And the thing was, we used to dress the property because what we're doing is selling the next person's in's dream. So the house is the biggest thing that's a normal, regular person will buy in their life. It's their biggest asset, and we have to make it look like their dream place because to them it's a move up. So it's their dream, but they're coming from rental or they're coming from a smaller house and what have you. So we dress the properties because they look good when they're dressed. That doesn't mean we spend a fortune on all of the furniture and all the artwork and all the stuff. And in fact, when we were dressing the front room, we only dressed 2 rooms in this one out of the 3. But the front room, we couldn't find a 4'6" bed second-hand to put in the room to dress it. So we actually used Asda, the plastic shopping baskets that Asda used. We used those as the base of the bed and put a quilt over the top, because it's the look that we're after. It's the image of the property, not the. No one's going to sleep in it, so it doesn't matter.
That's funny.
So we used Asda shopping baskets for a bed.
They would have been in for a shock if they went to just jump on the bed to see how comfy it was.
Absolutely, I think this is a bit. Oh, I'm not sure of the bed. Well, you're not having the bed. We're taking it out, but yeah, it's cool.
All right. Go on.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, it took him about 3 months to do, which is too long for a refurb. So we want to be aiming at getting in and out of a property, not for your first one in particular, but as a model in about 3 weeks. So we have rip out week is week 1. We have fit week, which is week 2, and we have decor and dress week, which is week 3. So we try and aim, and I've got a couple of clients who can do them faster than I do. But 3 weeks is, if it's going to take longer than 3 weeks and cost you 40 grand, do something different, do another deal, because it'll be easier, quicker in and out, and you can get on with the rest of your life and do another one, then make more money,
Well, that actually is a good segue to my next question, which is, if you're looking at beginner property traders, what initial steps would you recommend for them at identifying these types of deals that you're talking about, ones where you can come in, just basically turn it around inside of 3 weeks and potentially make, that kind of upside, like the last example you gave?
Well, the golden rule really is view properties. And I said on my mastermind on Saturday is there's hundreds of reasons why to not view a property, as in you find a fault on the listing, or it's got a short lease, or it's got tenants. One I've just had on the phone this morning, he says, Mark, there's a drug dealer lives on the 2nd floor, or above this flat. It doesn't make any difference to us at this point, because you could find a fault with every single property on every single listing of every single listing in the country. But that's what we want. We want the faults because that's putting other people off, and we're traders. So gold advice is go view, see what's on the ground on your area. Not too expensive, first and second time buyer type stock. Go see it, because the deals are done on the ground, not on the listing. The listing is just a lead. It's just an idea of what something is, and it could have a little bit of potential. And every single property you see will have a fault. The point after the viewing is to find out, or to think about, can I fix the fault, or is the fault acceptable? I'll give an example. We did a deal for Gareth. It's his deal in Rugby, and it's a 1930s family house, 3-bed. This was a semi-detached, and the feedback from from all the other viewings was that the kitchen was too small. And it's the 30s is that time where we're just starting to put cupboards in kitchens. We didn't have cupboards before. You'd have a sink and a cooker and not really, a table to prepare. So we just started to put kitchen cupboards in kitchens. Of course, when you start to put them in, everyone's all the way round on every wall and stuff. And this this kitchen was incredibly small, plus it was full cupboarded. And every single person that went to see the property said the kitchen's too small, which is true, absolutely true. But it was brand new. So every single agent that talked to us about it said you should put an extension on the back and then lock through to create the kitchen diner effect and all. No, Gareth, don't do that. Please don't do that, because that's going to spend, it's going to cost a fortune. Is just accept that the kitchen's too small, because it is. And then when on the pitch, when we're selling the property, when we've finished the refurb, because it needed all the rest of the things doing, is you give the next man in or the next person in the chance to upgrade their own property and do the extension into the garden, which was quite big, and then cut through the wall and do the kitchen diner thing. Give them the chance to make that sort of money on their own property when they buy it. So accept the fact the kitchen's small. It's in perfect condition. It's perfectly serviceable for one person to cook in, really. But do the rest of the house so it's glorious, so they fall in love with the rest of the house, not just the kitchen. And that's what he did.
Wow. Okay. All right. And I wanted to ask, because you've given a few examples where, for example, where you've said the guy didn't have his own funds and so had to go and sort of borrow money from someone in the group. So I guess the question is, how crucial, in your opinion, is networking in the property trading business? And could you suggest some effective ways to build and leverage such a network?
Yeah. So there's about 3 or 4 places where investors exist. And I think lots of people think, in the public anyway, that they're after high net worths. And I avoid them like the plague. I really do. The reason is because high net worths are high net worths because they've already got a system and a process in place, and that's how they become high net worths. So I avoid high net worths. What I'm after, or what I'm looking for, is someone that maybe done a little bit of property education, maybe done a weekend course somewhere, or a workshop, or a few webinars, and they kind of know some of the words, but they don't jump themselves because it's quite risky in their minds, or they don't want to get into property because they're not really property people. They've already got their own career and they're not really there. That's the people that I can help or borrow money from to do my refurbs, and that's for any client. You can, because there must be hundreds of thousands of people with 10, 20 grand in the bank and not a clue what to do with it. Tons of them, because a long life, you come into situations every now and again where you come into a lump of cash, which might be a refurb. It might be you've sold, a relationship, got back together, and you've got 2 houses, so you get rid of one and there's a bit of equity in that one. Or you might have a refinancing of a property and pull some money out of your own house because it's been in there a while and you've allowed it to grow, and you've been sensible with your money, so you end up with a lump. Even a lottery win, not a millions win, but you might have a small lottery win, or an inheritance. Someone in the family passes away and leaves you a little chunk, and I think you get a chunk I seem to have got a chunk about every decade, and it's come from different places, and sometimes it's a shock, sometimes it's expected, but I'm looking for those people with little chunks. And then don't do a big conversion, don't ask for hundreds of thousands of pounds on your first few deals. Get some, in fact, I think my first chunk came from a chap who owns, he's still got them, he's got hairdressing salons throughout the Midlands. And he's not a property person, he's not a property investor, he runs hairdressers. And he spends far too, I think he calls it on the scissors, spends far too much time on the scissors. He should be kind of promoting himself out of that and then running the salons. But that's what he likes. He's successful. He knows what he's doing. He's been in business 20 or 30 years, but he's not a property person. So he gives me chunks of money. I give him a return back. Nowadays, he doesn't even come to the property. He doesn't want to see it. Just wants to see the return back in the bank. So it's more about the return, and non-property people, or property people that are at the beginning, or they don't jump themselves. And they're the ones to go for, to strike up partnerships and relationships. And you can find them at property networking meetings, because they're the ones that are learning, and they're the ones getting pitched courses and stuff. You can find them online in Facebook groups. You can find them on LinkedIn. You can find them within your own, social circle. You can find them at business networking groups. There's loads of places that these people exist, and they don't need to be experienced property people to lend money off to give a return back. In fact, the one that lent the Birmingham one we spoke about earlier, that one is a property person that knows kind of the language and knows the stuff, but she isn't a property person particularly. She's just a regular person that's had a chunk of money in the bank and not quite sure what to do with it.
Okay, and then how then would you analyze? So obviously you had your mentee who found this person that was going to be repossessed and things like that. So, but how would you advise someone, or how do you analyze a local market to assess its potential? Like, are there any specific kind of like indicators that you're looking for, or what are the kind of metrics that you want it to tick certain boxes for you to think, okay, this is this is a place where I could have a good investment?
Yeah. I use a system called 9-box grids, and what I'm doing with 9-box grids, and anyone can do this. It's called 9-box grids because I split a certain area, town, neighborhood into 9 boxes. And across the top of the boxes, and you can do this however you like really, but across the top I've got the 3 types of property that I'd like to do in that area. Now, if you're in a city, you might go to studios and flats and stuff. If you're in a town, then you'd probably get to houses. So I'm looking at sort of first and second time buyer type properties, nothing really bigger. So in my town, I'm in Nuneaton in North Warwickshire, and I'm looking at houses. I'm looking at 2-bed houses, 2-bed terrace houses, 3-bed terrace houses, and 3-bed semis. And the reason for that is 2-bed semis and 2-bed semis are quite unusual. So I don't have a lot of them, but 3-beds, I've got quite a few of them. So 2-bed houses, terraces, 3-bed terraces, and 3-bed semis. I don't go any bigger than that because they become more expensive to refurb. So they're my 3 houses. And then down the side of my 9-box grid, I've got the 3 different conditions of a house, and that gives me different prices. So I call them Grot Box, Renter, and Palace. And I'll first explain what I mean by that. A palace, starting at the top, is ready for retail sale. It's dressed, it's gorgeous. The owners have done some improvements along the way. In fact, if you walk into a palace, you'd expect to smell coffee gurgling, on the countertop because it's that good. It just looks excellent. That's a palace. A renter has got everything in it, but it might need a little bit of updating. So it's got a miscoloured bathroom suite. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's miscoloured. It's not trendy. It's got older carpets in, but everything's serviceable. It's all there, and you could rent it straight away, hence the term renter. And then a grot box is a property that needs a full refurb. Generally speaking, bathroom, carpets, kitchen, decor, outside areas, that type of thing. That's what I call a grot box. And if I can apply this 9-box grid to, first of all, I can do a town. So let's do it on the whole town, just using the online portals of stuff that's for sale. So I do the whole town, and so I've got a ballpark of where I am. Now, if you do the whole town, you're going to get some anomalies in there, as in you get nicer areas and not so good areas. So then I whittle it down to a postcode. Let's say, well, in Nuneaton, CV10 and CV11, I've got 2 postcodes. So I'll do 2 postcodes, and then I've got an idea of which one's the better postcode, i.e. more expensive, and the cheaper postcode. Then I might whittle it down to more numbers, so CV10, 1, and do that as a 9-box grid, and then I get an area of about half a mile, maybe a little bit less. Then I could do CV1, 2, or CV10, 1, and the next letter. And I could actually whittle my 9-box grid down to 5 streets, because that's about a neighbourhood in terraced areas. So if I can get down to 5 streets and I know the price of nearly all of the houses on that street based on what's for sale now, my research is second to none, because I can tell you that the grot box price, the renter price, and the palace price of every single house in that neighbourhood. So I can tell ceiling prices, I can tell what I should be paying for a property, and when it's overpriced on the listing, for example. I can tell when a property has been reduced, if the original listing price was true or not, or realistic, or whether they've been greedy, or whether they've been advised by an agent to put up with this and see if they get it. I can spot the schoolboy errors. So if you price a property for retail sale at 129, well, all the first-time buyers in the area are not going to look at that because they know they've got to pay extra stamp over 125, for example, or 175, which is the next level, or 250, which is the next level. So you can see if they make schoolboy errors, and it's weird if you can get 115 for a property, it's above that 100 grand psychological barrier. So you can get 124,950 for a property. So why sell it at 115? It's pointless. And so you can break ceilings from time to time. But doing 9 box grid research, there is, apart from living in an area, there is no better research to do. And you can use sold prices or for sale prices or asking price. You've got every price you like, but it's to give you an idea of where the stock is, where the stuff is that you need to do. Once you've done one and you've narrowed down to a neighbourhood, I brought an investor of mine round on an inspection trip or inspection day, and I picked him up at the station, drove him around the 3 areas that the apparent in the area. I took him to the patch and I said, these are the patches, and I could tell him virtually the price of every single house. And it was weird because we were in a convertible at the time. Nice sunny day, we're driving around, and one of the roofers, because everyone knows I'm ex-army, I did a career in the army to start with, and one of the roofers actually chipped from, he was on a ladder at the top of the roof, says, "All right, Colonel." the trades know me in the town, so because I use them quite a lot. So yeah,
so
that was quite good endorsement.
It sounds like that's going to take quite some time. It's not something you do overnight. If you're getting to the point where you can say, right, that block versus that block of terrace houses is going to have like a 5 grand difference or whatever because it's the wrong side of the tracks or something like that. So you're over time, you're looking to see how much one of those properties that's just, if you look at people that just come off a training course and they do the back to bricks that you mentioned earlier, so take it back to bricks, put everything brand spanking new. And when you look at that, that's sort of your showroom property, your palace, then you're going to look at something that is tired, is rentable, but it's a bit tired. That's your renter. And then you're going to look at properties that it just needs work. It's a bit of a smelly dog or, needs a refurb. That's your grot box. So you're looking at those 3 categories, those 3 types of properties for each type of property, as it were. So those 3 categories for each type of property. So it's whether it's a 2-bed or a 3-bed or a semi-detached. Now, you mentioned that, price points of like 115, 125, but I'm down in the south. That type of thing is not really, the price point is a lot higher. And as you go to bigger cities like London and I guess Birmingham, things like that, again, you're going to be hard pushed to find properties in that sort of price point, like a 2 and 3 bedroom house, maybe a flat type of thing. So does that make a difference?
Yeah. See, that's the whole point of doing it, because you've got to do, it's not right. A lot of people come off some sort of training or learning and they say, well, I want to do HMOs or I want to do SA or I want to do flips or whatever. And I don't concentrate on strategies because it's pointless what I want to do. It's what suits the stock on the ground. So I don't look at a property and think, will that make a HMO, therefore I'll do it, because there isn't actually enough stock anywhere to do that. So what I do is when I've done my research and I've discovered what stock's on the ground, then I go and view some properties, then I decide what strategy suits the vendor and suits the stock, not what suits me. So I ignore the strategies for the time being, for one. And yes, you're absolutely right. In the south, the property is more expensive than the north. But instead of thinking, right, in London, for example, within the M25, a 2-bed terrace house will cost $500,000. So you can't go on the 125, 175 type of thing. So you have to drop what property's there. What are the first-time buyers living in? And it might be a studio. If you have to drop to a studio and do it, let's face it, you can do a studio for 50 pence and have it looking like an absolute palace. It doesn't cost a lot to do one. Well, studios generally nowadays aren't one room. They're normally a room with a bed, which is the living room, and the kitchen sort of segmented off, and then a bathroom somewhere else, or a bathroom in another room. So studios are a little bit bigger than what we imagine them to be sometimes. But if you drop to studios and do studios as your model, because that's suits and you can get in and out quickly, do studios. But there's nothing wrong with doing studio flats, and they're easy to do, or they're cheap to do. There's a couple of things you've got to be aware of, like where the wet walls are and stuff, the feed to all the the water coming in and the waste going out and stuff. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with doing studios or 1-bed flats, as long as, I mean, there's a couple of things to worry about 1-bed flats. In fact, I had a client, they were just outside the M25, but the area was expensive. And we found a model for her, which was retirement flats, because they were about 100 grand cheaper than the equivalent flat of a normal 1-bed or a 2-bed flat. And as long as they're on the ground floor, because, an old person doesn't want to go upstairs, or there was a lift, but then you got high service charges, she could create a model out of retirement places, which are a perfect investor model too, because you get a good tenancy there. They're not having parties and ripping the place to bits. Mm-hmm. They actually want to live there and live there quite peacefully. So you're getting a good tenant, a cheap property or cheaper, sometimes high service charges because they have a communal area sometimes in the ground floor or the basement, and sometimes have a lift which increases the service charges. But that's acceptable because all flats have an increased service charge if they've got a lift. So that you can create models, and I promise everyone that might be listening, you can create a model that works on the ground for the sellers you've got and suits your skills.
I've got two questions around that, actually.
Go for it.
One would be, how about the fact that most retirement homes, that type of thing that you were talking about, will say you need to be a certain age. So does that age thing restrict you from buying it at all?
It depends on the lease, and that's why we have to read the lease to make sure before we can do the deal. So there's two criteria on retirement places. The owner's got to be over, let's say 55. There's different ages, but let's say 55. So the owner's got to be over 55 on the lease. Therefore, if you're not over 55, you can't do that. You can't buy that property. Or the occupier's got to be over 55. Now, it's weird because a lot of people say, well, if it says over 55 only, that means anything. Well, actually, it doesn't. If the occupier's got to be over 55, then you can still do it. And it's not illegal to own a retirement flat if you're under 55 because, retirement flats in probate cases come to the kids. And the kids, you generally lose parents when you're in your 40s and 50s, so they might be under 55 anyway. So it's not illegal to own them. It's just there's a stipulation that most of them are stipulation that the occupier should be over 55. And that's fine.
Very good point. That's a very good point. Okay. I'm just conscious of the time. So there's a couple more questions I really wanted to ask you.
Okay.
One of which was, how do, obviously the economy is either going up, it's down, it's flat, whatever. So how do, economic factors like interest rates and inflation actually impact local property markets, and how can property traders use this information to their advantage?
That's a good one because I've been through a few recessions now. It's weird because on a downturn or recession or depression, whatever they call it, on a downturn, single buy-to-lets don't always work. And that's where the creative strategies kind of come into their own. And they only kind of appear on a downturn. Things like rent to buy, Saab is an old type of deal that we used to do in the old days. Lease options appear on a downturn all the time. And people want to know more about them, it seems. There's more interest in lease options. When the market's flying, people are just buying property, doing it up and then selling it, or they're keeping it or adding to a portfolio. But in a downturn, as traders, we have to get more creative. So we might approach in fact, I've just done one this morning, so I'm quite excited about it. It's a cottage on a canal side, so it's next to water. That's always a good feature for retail selling. Now, I know I've been tracking it for a while. I know that they've had 2 fallovers. And they've had 2 fallovers because the property, it's a cottage and it's a 3-bed cottage. It needs a refurb. And I know the fallovers are because they went to the wrong bank to get the money. So what I'm going to do now, and I'm going to make this offer probably this afternoon, is I can do an assisted sale with them because they can't sell it. It's been on since last March. I've been watching it since last March. We've been to view it. We walked past it when we walked the dog. I know it's a cracking property. It'll sell without, it's got no parking because it's on a canal side and it's got a weird garden or no access rear garden, but it's a cracking retail sale. It really is. And the creative all the creative deals come out when people can't sell. And all the creative deals come out when single buy-to-lets don't quite work right because of high interest rates or, or some other factor. And a trader's got to pivot. We can't decide on one strategy and that strategy always works, because when the interest rates just last year, in fact, and people will be aware of this, the interest rates shot up, inflation shot up, and so did all the heating bills. Well, rent to rent sometimes don't work when all of those bills shot up at the same time, and loads of rent to renters gave the properties back because they didn't work. And if they don't work, then what's the owner going to do now? Because when he takes it back, is he going to rent the property out as a HMO and then suffer all the bills and the management, which he tried to get out of, and that's why he gave the rent to renter a deal, So as traders, it's a golden word. It's an old cached word, I suppose, but pivot. You've got to pivot, and that's why we operate 70-20-10. 70% of your time, money, effort, and skill goes into your core business, and then 20% you're doing of your time, money, effort, and skill. So I'll just get Oh, I'm live. I'm doing an interview. All right. I'm not speaking. Can I call you back? I'm actually live doing an interview right now. Can I call you back? Yes, certainly. Okay, bye. Sorry about that.
It just goes to show that when you work with your one-to-one clients, you are on hand and you are actually answering the phone and helping them move forward. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's actually a problem when you tell people they can phone any time if they get a problem. They do. They do. Yeah, so 70-20-10 was 20% is something you're doing that can take over your 70 if the market goes a bit bonkers, and then 10% of your time, money, effort, and skill should go into something that you're learning for the future or you're going to develop later on in your career that's bigger, better, or brings you in more money, or it's more efficient, or whatever. So 70-20-10 is and all businesses have it, right? Because learn from the big companies. Tesco they're basically a food, superstore, but they also do clothing, and they also do chemists now, which is 70-20-10. That's all it is. It's 70-20-10.
That's really good advice, I think. I really like the fact that you're saying if you're a property trader. In fact, how do you define a property trader? What's the difference between a trader, an investor, or sourcer, deal packager, or what's the difference?
Yeah. I started calling it property trading when sourcing used to have a bit of a bad name because it was a bit shady, and it was a small industry, and it was a bit weird. And I put my name above the door to keep me straight, and I thought I was doing the right thing. And then when I saw property, when I went to view, I realised I wasn't sourcing at all. What I was doing was looking at the property, at the vendor situation, and coming up with a deal that suited them, and it worked commercially. So it wasn't always sourcing the property on. It was doing something else with the property, maybe a bit of house doctoring, or maybe a full refurb, or maybe doing a creative contract like a lease option or something. And that's not really sourcing. That's because sourcing is finding a deal and trading it to somebody else. Whereas trading is doing anything that the vendor wants, and it works commercially. So trading could be anything. It could be any strategy. It can be any type of deal. It could be any type of market, it could be the investor market or the retail market, using different people to sell. So if I trade a property on or a deal on to an investor, then I'm sourcing the deal or sourcing on the deal. If I trade on the retail market, the estate agent's actually selling the property for me. So it's different. Trading is different types of, it's all the strategies. You don't have to learn everything about SA to be able to trade an SA deal. You don't have to learn everything about refurbs to refurb a deal and sell it on the retail market. You don't have to know everything about selling for an estate agent to sell a property for you.
So sources will focus on property traders focus much more on finding a deal and giving it to an investor. So they charge a sourcing fee, or really it's a finder's fee, really. Whereas property traders, you're looking at how can I solve this issue of the vendor and then create like a win-win situation. So the exit could be anything, could be a service accommodation, could be onto another agent, could be you put your money in to make it nicer, or you borrow the money to put it in and make it nicer and then sell on the open market, or there's a number of different exits. But what you're really saying is probably traders, they come and they analyze the market and do your 9-box grid, walk around, have a look at what's there, and then come up with a strategy, as opposed to maybe a sourcer or an investor who comes in and says, I'm doing HMOs, I'm only doing rent-to-rent deals, I'm only doing these options or something like that. Traders
Yeah.
actually are looking at where's the money in this opportunity? Where's the opportunity?
Yes, exactly that. If I do this deal, how can I get paid?
Right.
And that's a trader. And that's like every business, right? If you display beans on a shelf, you want to mark them up so you make a profit. And that's how they trade the beans. We just do exactly the same with property. And lots of people say, well, I haven't got any money to get into property. I haven't got big deposits and this sort of stuff. It isn't about that. It doesn't matter how much you've got in the bank, because the people that trade aeroplanes don't buy the aeroplanes. The people that trade yachts don't buy the yachts. It's just doing exactly the same thing. So it's looking at creative stuff to decide where the profit is and where the money is for you. How do you get paid?
I like it. All right. Well, couple last questions then. In terms of tools, what digital tools or platforms do you find like indispensable for like the day-to-day property trading?
Well, I've got 2 tools at the moment. Oh, well, 3 tools. So some form of broadcast software, which I use. I'm trying to think now which one I use. It's Zoom. So some kind of broadcast software that can record your stuff and get it out there as well. So broadcast software, definitely. I've got a CRM system. I couldn't live without it. I couldn't remember people. The amount of people I've got on the database now. I couldn't remember the properties. I would get head bashed if I didn't have a CRM system. And then the last one is our lead title app, because it just works.
We'll come on to that in a moment, because that's a nice little segue for those people who are watching and not sure what that is. We'll go to that in a minute, but I want to know future predictions for you. So where do you see the biggest opportunities in the property market in the near future?
Well, since my first refurb, when I did a flip and I didn't make any profit on it, and we've got better and better now, I'm going to continue doing exactly what I do, and that's spotting where the money is in the deal, negotiating with the agents or negotiating with the vendors, dealing with
phone calls.
It's a one-to-one. Hi, Mark speaking. Mark, I'm actually live on an interview right now. Can I buzz you back when I'm finished? No, not a problem, mate. Not a problem. See you soon. All right, bye. Part of the program is that my one-to-one clients can call me whenever they want to. There's no sort of set times, and therefore they do. So sorry about that. Right, where were we? Oh, what would it? I'd carry on looking at deals. And if you're right at the start of the journey, right at the beginning, is go view some houses. And at this point, it doesn't matter whether you get it wrong or you say the wrong thing or you don't get the deal yet. Go view some houses, because the deals are all done on the ground. They're never done online. They're never done research. I know there's lots of stuff, and online, the internet's fantastic, but it can't show you the deal. It just can't. We're not at that level yet at all. And you will discount or throw out properties or deals that you wouldn't have seen if you look just online. The only thing online research does for you is convince you not to view. And
so all of those scrolling through Rightmove and all these kind of things, thinking, no, that's not quite right, or the asking price is too much, so I'm not going to bother. Like, you're missing out on stuff, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I'm missing out. Yeah, the deals are on the ground, and I've seen 2 properties this morning that were completely rubbish. I couldn't do anything with them. They were too good. There's no value add there for me to do. The vendor's not motivated enough to do a deal. I can't do them, but that's all right. They're nice enough people. It's not as if we're digging holes for a living. We're just viewing properties, right? So go view some properties. Go have a look at what's on the ground in your area, and start to learn a few of the words the agents say that might be unexpected at the moment. There's no financial risk to doing it. It's just time. And I used to when I used to view properties when the kids were young. I've got 2 daughters. When the kids were younger, we used to make it a bit of a fun day. We'd bumble about the town and drive past the house about 10 times sometimes, and take them for a snack at lunchtime and get them drinks. And one used to do the addresses, and one used to do the filling in the forms of the inspection and stuff. And in that way, they learnt about property. So my gold advice is get out and view some deals, or get out and view some property.
That's what I was going to actually ask you. My last question is, what's the one piece of advice you wish every property trader would take to heart? Is it that, or would you add something else?
I would add something else. is at this point, if you're right at the beginning, ignore the strategies. The only reason a strategy exists is to sell you an education on that strategy. So as a trader, don't worry about the strategies. You don't have to. It's worry about what the deal is, because you can always trade. If it's not your particular strategy or eventually becomes your strategy, you can always trade that deal on somebody else anyway. And a chap who was struggling right at the moment, he said, it was not working as a singlet. He's got some properties in Hull. What can I do? He's not living in Hull. He's living, afar. So that's difficult to do anything apart from single, really, which is you can distance manage. But to make the property cash flow, it really needs to be an SA, which is service accommodation. He's not a service accommodation expert. He doesn't know the business or the industry at all. Doesn't know how to set one up. Doesn't know how to address one. Doesn't have any of the kind of techniques that service accommodations operators use. So find someone else who does do it. There's bags of companies out there that want property that they're quite reasonably new, not totally new, but they're bringing in cash flow. They're making service accommodation work in properties. And I've got a friend over in Cambridgeshire that she's doing it in her own house, just on one room, and she's now a super host. And her room that she rents out, it's miles better than a lodger because it pays the bills and the mortgage, and it's just one room. So I'm not suggesting you have to do it, but don't learn about all of the strategies because you don't need to. Just learn the kind of skim over so you can recognize a deal when it works, then sell it to somebody else that does that strategy.
I love it. That's a great bit of advice, actually. I'm looking at the time. We're at the top of the hour, so thank you very much for being generous with your time today, Mark, and dropping your pearls of wisdom. It's been fantastic. For everybody watching, if they want to get hold of you, are you able to give me the links that they can put in the chat below? And if they wanted to maybe talk to you about potentially being a one-to-one client, how's the best way for them to actually get in contact with you?
By email or phone. You can see it's me that answers the phone. So call me on my desk line. I'll put it below or on the edit, or email mark@markironson.co.uk. That gets to me. I see them all. So yeah, anyway you'd like to, or Facebook. I'm on Facebook as well. Just look me up, and you'll find me.
Fantastic. Thanks. Look, once again, thank you very much, everybody, for watching. Make sure you leave some comments below. We'll look through all the comments, and I'd be interested to know what you've got to say. Any questions follow-up questions I can give to Mark, I'm more than happy to pass them on. And until now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.
Thanks, guys.